Thanks for clicking on the video, and here on Mimic, I'm going to present another classic D&D TSR module. This has the title Castle, Caldwell, and Beyond, and has the designation of B9. B stands for Basic. I'm going to go over a brief overview of this module history, and then we'll dive deeper into it, and we'll go page by page. And I'm filming this in 4K, so you can read along with me. And of course, there will be heavy spoilers. Now, before we crack it open, the first thing I want to mention is the cover art. Yes, it is by Caldwell. And I thought when I bought this, this was the reason why they called it Castle Caldwell. And of course, Caldwell is famous for drawing a lot of babes on his cover. And I thought it was titillating enough that maybe inside there will be cover art by him as well. But actually, the interior art does not feature this same artist. And there's nothing featuring a female in distress, so let's put it that way. So who actually authored this module? You can see here on the cover, it's credited to Harry Knuckles, but that's a rather ridiculous sounding name, and there's nowhere in the internet that Harry Knuckles is given credit to writing anything else in the RPG world. There is an anecdotal story of James Ward accusing the editor back in the day that it's probably a pseudonym for a TSR employee, and maybe Caldwell wrote this module himself. I mean, it's theoretically possible, I suppose, but the editor states, no, it's a real person. But anyways, if he did write this and he's an individual that does exist, well, he hasn't really written anything else. So could Caldwell have written this module? You know, there are great artists out there, but they're not all great writers. Regardless of who actually wrote this module, they may not want to take full credit, as it's not my favorite module by a long shot. And I'll go over the problems with it and how you can make it better yourself. To get a better understanding of this module, let's flip it to the back. And you can see here, right at the top here, 5 exciting short adventures to make your basic campaign come alive. So yes, there are going to be 5 short little vignettes, I suppose. The first 2 are actually tied together, but the other 3 are not. And I think that lends to a problem of the module, as because they're shorter, there's less story or engagement for the players to be invested into this, and as a dungeon master to tell a good story. So I would highly encourage you to somehow link them together. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll give you suggestions how to do that. Let's go back to the front here. And I should also quickly point out that this was published in 1985. And we do have a playlist on the channel of multiple D&D modules I've broken down in the past, probably about 30 by now. And our current giveaway for this month is a couple of Dungeons & Dragons modules. So why don't you check that out right now? Welcome to the channel where we munch on multiple nerdy things, from board games to Dungeons & Dragons, comic books to toys, video games on Saturdays, and gamer snacks on Sundays. We also do monthly giveaways. And for the joyous summer months of June and July, we're going to do a pair of authentic TSR D&D products. I'll put a link down below how you could win this awesome prize. If you're watching this in the future, I'm sorry you missed out. You could click our main channel page for our current giveaway. And if you do enjoy the video you're about to watch and see, hopefully consider hitting that like and subscribe. It's free to you and helps us out on the channel. Thank you for watching. I'll put a link down below of a playlist of other D&D modules we have broken down before. And I think eventually we will give this out as a giveaway in the near future. So if you don't like the modules that you saw earlier, well, hopefully you sub up and you don't miss out on this giveaway, as it is an extra copy. I do have a better copy that I keep in my archives here. All right, time to get the booklet out of the cover. And the first thing you will notice that there is actually no map on the inside of this cover, which is typically traditional of these TSR modules, whether it's D&D or Top Secret or some other adventure gaming system. This basically is a list of all the creatures within, and they are on these tables here, so they're not actually printed on the booklet and not in the actual encounter rooms, which I do prefer. I prefer the format where it is in the actual room, I can understand why they did this way, as some of the adventures have soldiers, and it would probably be the same stat throughout several different rooms. But I still would prefer, especially if it's an individual monster, that it is printed on the room itself, because it just makes record keeping and DMing so much easier. The other complaint is, because they did it this way and there's no map here, well, for example, if you have a map here, well, if you are gonna DM this module and you're reading stuff here, now you have to turn back the page to go back to the map, back and forth. It's an annoyance. Of course, you could photocopy this, but photocopiers, maybe not as prevalent back in the day, or easy access, so it was a bit of a chore. So that is just something to be aware of. All right, so let's put this off to the side, and we can see the table of contents here. There are going to be 5 different adventures. First one's called The Clearing of Castle Caldwell. The second one's called The Dungeons of Terror, which is basically the dungeon of the castle itself. There is a separate adventure called The Abduction of the Princess Sylvia, and then The Great Escape, which takes place in a outpost, military outpost. And the last one is called The Sanctuary of Alwyn the Ardent. This is probably the most interesting. And I guess in order of the strength of the adventures, probably the worst is the first, and they get stronger as they go along. Okay, so let's get to the actual adventure itself. And we are going to start off with the first one here, The Clearing of Castle Caldwell. Before we actually start the adventure, I should mention briefly that this introduction is quite well written for someone that is new to Dungeons & Dragons and wants to start DMing here. I like to point out this one particular paragraph where good DM not only knows the rules, he or she knows when to break them. Don't be a slave to the dice if they get too far out of line with common sense. But don't let your game become a giveaway campaign either. The best kind of D&D game is challenging for the players, but not so difficult that the party is easily wiped out. So I do like this paragraph quite a bit. The setup for The Clearing of Castle Caldwell is there is a rich local merchant, Clifton Caldwell, and he has bought a small castle recently. So he is hiring some adventurers to clear it out so he could occupy it, refurnish it, and remodel it, whatever it might be. So he will pay the adventurers some gold pieces and pay half up front and give the other half later after they clear out the castle. So that is the setup. It should be also noted there is some wandering monsters here. There are 4 goblins. They reside in room number 2. However, the player characters might encounter them in the hallways, and it gives you a little statistic how to roll for that encounter possibility. Before we break down each room, let's take a look at the actual map here. And you can see here, it's quite a simplistic map. I'm not a big fan of these very simple maps. If anyone goes through this dungeon, yeah, it's pretty obvious they're going to go door by door by door. In a way, it's sort of boring that way. However, on the flip side, you are tasked to clear this castle, so it makes it really easy for the players to clear the castle, right? They're going to have to go door by door by door. So a little bit boring, but a little bit necessary. So you might want to add an incentive to find certain things. For example, 5 magical family heirlooms within this castle. If they find all 5, then the task will be complete. You can hide 4 of them in some of the rooms that you think are relevant, like this one with a statue and certain rooms with a monster. And there's actually one room in this castle that has a locked door. And no matter what the party members will do, whether they use a spell or try to burn it or destroy the door, they will not be able to pass. So that leads to the second adventure where the merchant will hire a wizard to open up that door, and then you will be tasked and hired to clear out the dungeon beneath. However, you could have the last magical family heirloom be hidden in that area behind this locked door. So they know that the last one is there. So you don't have to have your player characters go through the entire dungeon to find everything. They could be a little bit more systematic and look for magical items. And anyways, that's what I did to make it less tedious for them and also less tedious for me. Also, before I continue, I also want to say that this adventure and the other ones have actually plentiful amount of treasure. There's a lot of gold and loot to be had, so it's quite generous in that regards. Okay, so looking at the map more closely, you can see it's numbered from 1 and goes all the way around here. You can see there's a special room here with a statue number 7. So this first room is essentially empty here, but there is some sack of treasure already to be found. Room 2 here is the room with the goblins. So this room does have treasure as well. 3,000 gold pieces, 4,000 silver pieces, and 1 gem worth 50 gold pieces. So a lot of loot, as I mentioned earlier. Your player characters most likely will encounter the goblins in this room, as they will be entering the castle from this direction. And the goblins will be arguing amongst themselves. Therefore, the player characters will hear loud noises behind this door and be able to get a jump on them. Rooms 3, 4, and 5 are each occupied by a single human trader, maybe a bandit of that nature, and if one gets in danger, they'll knock on the walls to get the others to help them out. Room 6 here has a tower, but it is empty. And in room 7, there is a statue. So this statue greets them by saying, "May I help?" This statue is able to answer questions about the castle and its inhabitants. It will answer truthfully 3 questions put by it by lawful characters once per day. Obviously, this statue is a mechanism for the dungeon master to give more information about the castle to player characters. And if you do my recommended subplot of 5 magical items, well, the statue will know where they are, so they don't have to hunt in each single room. Rooms 8 and 9 are empty. Room 10 contains a room of sturges. We'll flip the page. In room 11, there is a chapel. There is an acolyte, a first level cleric. She does have in possession 2 potions of healing, but she doesn't want to engage in attack. And just like the other traders or bandits that you saw earlier, rather live than die. Rooms 12 and 13 are empty. Room 14 has the biggest trap in this adventure. So here it appears to be empty, but there is a large crab spider clinging to the ceiling that will drop on a party member, surprise them on the roll of 1 through 4 on a d6. If the spider makes a hit, the person has to save against poison. If they fail, they will die. So, of course, don't be a slave to the device, as the introduction states. So you don't want to kill off your team immediately. The other rooms have various other minor encounters. Room 15 has 3 bandits. This one has some kobolds here. This one has a skeleton, but it is not undead. And the most important room really is room 21 here, the utility room. This room is wizard locked and cannot be opened by anyone in the party. If the party asks the statue in room 7 about the door, it will say much danger, strange magic, and great treasure lies behind the door. So this is the door that needs to be open to enter the dungeon in adventure number 2. So if you follow the original goal of clearing out the dungeon, they will be able to do so, except for this one room. They will have to report, and basically that would be the end goal. The other rooms have minor encounters as well. This one has a giant shrew. This one has a cobra, but most of these other rooms are actually empty. The large courtyard in the center of the castle has some wolves. So a little bit boring, right? So one way you could tie this adventure with the others in the subsequent stories is the very last one features a almost religious cult. So you could have maybe some of the cult members be here, like maybe instead of 3 bandits, they're cultists. And one reason to do so is in the last adventure, you're tasked to killing the leader of the cultists, but maybe these guys could be deserters and they're scared of the cultists. And so the player characters could get a little background that, hey, maybe this cultist leader is a bad guy that we should take out later. And that's it for adventure number 1. Let's flip the page and start adventure number 2. You already know what adventure number 2 is going to involve. Basically, Caldwell has hired a sorcerer to unlock that wizard locked door in that castle, and now you have access to the dungeon within. That wizard does not want to go with you, as he says, oh, it looks too dangerous for me. So you are hired now to clear out the dungeon. So the dungeon, let me show you the map here. It looks like this. It's a little bit more interesting. Room number 1 is right here. This is where that door was locked, and in that room is a basement door leading down, and therefore there is a trapdoor in the ceiling here. So the rooms will go in a clockwise fashion as far as descriptions. The most interesting room here will be this room here with all these coffins and a teleport circle. This actually communicates with this teleporter over here in room number 5. The secret door here leads to the exit. Okay, let's start with room number 1. And this is sort of an interesting encounter where there is a doppelganger. And you can see the room description has some blanks because you're supposed to fill in the blanks of a player character you want the doppelganger to copy. So the doppelganger is trying to lead one of the player characters away from the party and will try to assassinate him and take on his form. If he fails to do so, he'll just attack. He actually knows about a treasure in that room. There is a treasure somewhere on the side walls here. He does not tell the player characters about this if he is captured. There is see over here, the doppelganger has no treasure with it, but knows of a treasure of 500 gold pieces that is contained in the west wall of this room. It is covered up and looks so much like the rest of the wall that is nearly impossible to find, as it's really deep down, without the help of the doppelganger or the treasure map that the player characters may discover later. Even with knowledge of where the treasure is, the characters must spend at least 2 turns digging through the wall to reveal the treasure. So that is room number 1. In room number 2, there is a magic user here, but or actually several of them, and then they have gone insane and will attack the player characters. The next room is empty, another empty room, and here is number 5, which is a key to that teleportation to that area with the coffins. This room is set up that in the corner there appears to be a cabinet full of shells of brilliant gems and elaborate pieces of jewelry and sacks of what appears to be shining gold. This room has no monster in it. The door wasn't even locked or trapped. So yes, it is a trap, this whole cabinet. It is an illusion, so any character that approaches within 10 feet of this cabinet are instantly teleported to room number 14. So we'll talk about room 14 in a bit later. Some of these other rooms are empty. This room here has 4 berserkers, and then several of these other rooms are empty. And then we'll talk about room 14 in a second. But going back to these 4 berserkers, as I mentioned, there's really nothing to tie this adventure with the other adventures. In fact, after you clear out these berserkers and investigate the tomb, the adventure's over. There doesn't seem to be a unifying theme why these berserkers are there, why the magic users are in this room. They're just populating a empty space. So going back to the last adventure where you are tasked to kill a leader of a cult, you could have these cultists influencing these berserkers and also giving more information about the leader of the berserker. You could say that they never met the leader. They believe the leader is a male, which it is not. That becomes sort of important later. You could also state that they are deserters, as they were hired to be part of the army for the leader of the cult, as adventure number 4 involves a outpost. And so you could allude to that area and tie in the venture that way. So I just want you to be aware that you might have to do a little work to tie these adventures together, but it is definitely possible. Okay, so now let's move on to room number 14 here, and you can see there are various coffins set around it. So coffin number 1 and 10, they switch the direction of the teleporter. Obviously, it's set up right now to teleport from 5 to 14. but they will have to open the opposite one to trigger the reverse direction of 14 to 5. And this is relatively important as the trapdoor here turns out to be a one-way direction. It's stated over here, the trapdoor above is a magical one-way door. So later on, when their player characters are in this dungeon and figure out that they have cleared it or whatnot and want to leave, they will not be able to do so. So they might investigate this teleporting ring and try explore all the coffins because they're trying to find a way out. So coffin number 2 contains some silver pieces. Number 3 has a white. Number 4 has more silver pieces. Number 4 has a spray that turns all the metal into rust, acting like a rust monster, so that can be devastating. Number 6 has some more treasure. Number 7 has a treasure map showing the location of the treasure room number 1, which is embedded in the wall. It also has a scroll of floating discs, and more importantly, it has a piece of paper that contains the instructions on how to escape the dungeon. As I mentioned, this is a one-way entrance. So they need to find the secret door here to be able to escape this area. Number 8 coffin contains another white with more treasure inside. As I mentioned, this module is very generous with its loot, so that is a plus. And then coffin number 9 also contains a lot of coins as well. So here is the depiction of the treasure map leading to the embedded treasure in room number 1. And this is the little puzzle that is going to trigger the secret door to open up in that corridor you saw. So you want to give the player characters a copy of this, and they will read it. To exit from this awful place, the eastern corridor you must pace and chant the magic words, and it looks like gibberish. But if you pronounce it phonetically, it sounds like, oh, what a goose I am. So it's a really odd phrase, and it doesn't seem to tie to anything. There's no goose in the module, and why a goose? Why something so ridiculous? And you could use this to tie into the other adventures. You could have a goose motif being like the mascot of the cult. You could change this phrase to a different animal or monster and use that as the depiction for the shield or banner for the cult leader. You could use this as the person that created this may be a little bit wonky and have some other paperwork in that treasure chest pointing at the madness of the person that casted this spell. You could have him be not only the one that casted the spell to protect the escape tunnel, but be the one to cast the one-way entrance, and also be the one that wizard locked the door. As in the next adventure here, the abduction of Princess Sylvia, she has been abducted by a wizard. She has been abducted by Oliver, a skilled magic user. So that would be one way to tie all of this together. And I would suggest you do so. I tried to do so when I was running this campaign. Anyways, that is adventure number 2. And this is adventure number 3. So this has a different setup where a king has hired your player characters to rescue his daughter that has been abducted. She was set to marry a prince of a neighboring kingdom. But you could change it to tie in with Caldwell, the merchant. Obviously, he's rich and wealthy, and maybe some people have kidnapped his daughter, and he has hired you to rescue her. So you could easily tie it in. Not only that, but the magic user that did kidnap her, you could say that he is a devotee of the other religion, and maybe even have a goose motif on him or whatever animal you decide to pick. The abduction was witnessed by a character called Gerald, and he will lead the player characters to the location where the kidnappers went. So that is how you will find them. Before we talk about the rooms, let's look at the map. So this is Oliver's fortress, the magic user. And you can see it's relatively symmetrical. The entrance is here, and there will be a big room here. And the room descriptions are going to go in this direction. You can see there's a secret door here to here, and another secret door here. And the last room is going to be this description up at the top. There is also a secret door here and a sliding wall, and I believe this is where the main treasure is in this dungeon. All right, let's start with the entrance here, which is going to be guarded by a humanoid. This humanoid is a goblin with a short sword and spear, and yeah, he's basically asleep. When the player has dealt with the goblin, the following occurs. So whether you have the player characters kill him or just tie him up, another humanoid will enter the area, and it's a lizard man, and he will say, "Hey, what are you guys doing here? You're not with us." So he will attack as well. Number 2 is a guard post here. And in this room, there are no more guards because you just dealt with it as that was the lizard man there. In this room, there is a scroll, and it has a cure disease spell that's supposed to help you out with the green slime that you will encounter in this corridor here. Let's see, in this tunnel, there is some yellow mold that you might have to deal with, but also a green slime that is at the end over here. It's also part of the story that there is a goblin that was in this guard room, and not just the lizard man, and he actually has used this tunnel, and he's warning Oliver that there is a party of invaders. So he will not be surprised. That's part of the story here. He went to tell Oliver about the intruders. It will be impossible to surprise Oliver when he is encountered. Okay, so let's talk about this really big room here, the training room. So Oliver is aware of the party, and he's gone to room number 4 right here. And you can see there's no actual entrance here, but it's sort of like overhangs, and you can spy on the player characters in this region. If the player characters enter this area, he's going to cast a phantasmal force spell and create illusion of the princess or the daughter of the merchant, whatever story you want to pick. This illusion will show the daughter being guarded by an owlbear. This, of course, is an illusion, so once the player characters attack it or hit it in one way or fashion, it will break the illusion and vanish. But when they do that, the player characters will hear a loud, sinister laugh coming from the east. If they inspect the east wall here, they cannot enter this room, but they find like a hidey hole that he is spying from. So anyways, Oliver will leave this room 4 and head to the laboratory, room number 13 up top there. Room number 4 is this observation room, which is secret. Room number 5 is the goblin leader's quarters, and this is where this tunnel exited to. Number 6 is more goblin quarters. Let's flip the page here. Number 7 is Oliver's bedroom. It's relatively empty here. Number 8 is the lizard man's leader's quarters. There is a pool of water nearby, and at the bottom of this pool, which looks very murky, actually has a lot of treasure buried within, 1,500 gold pieces and 5,000 silver pieces. Yes, a lot of loot and treasure to be found in this module. There is a lizard man's quarters here, and the sliding door guards this treasure room. Because this is going to be a large amount of treasure, it is trapped to trigger a release of 3 zombies that will attack when the sliding door is removed, and these zombies will come out. Number 3 is a dining room, and there is a goblin here that's very upset working the kitchen, so he will be very easy to convince to sort of give information about Oliver, and he could give information not just about the wizard, but whatever story you want to tie into. Like maybe he is upset working kitchen duty all the time, not just here, but also at the military outpost. yeah, you could tie these stories together. Number 12 is the kitchen and then another upset goblin working there. And number 13 is the end room with the real princess and Oliver. It is the magic user laboratory. So when the player characters enter this room, Oliver will be there and he will say, "Oh well, it seems as if my soldiers have failed to eliminate this nuisance. But as I always say, if you want something done properly, do it yourself." So there will be actually the daughter there, and she is actually guarded by an owlbear as well. So this owlbear is charmed and will fight on Oliver's behalf. And the stats for Oliver and the owlbear are on the front cover here at the bottom. Okay, you can take a look at that. And obviously, he will try to do his best to fight them, but not to the death, as he will want to escape. If the player characters capture him alive and return him to the king or the merchant, it will give him additional treasure, but should he escape, he's going to harbor deep resentment and may come back to exact revenge. So you could have him be another monster or counter in a subsequent adventure later here. I should also mention that in this region, there are no wandering monsters. Some additional details of this room. In this laboratory, there are multiple vials here, but none of them are labeled. 2 of them are potions of healing, 2 of invisibility, 1 of diminution, 1 of gaseous form, 1 of growth, and 1 of poison. So none of them are labeled. So if you drink the poison one, yeah, you have to do a saving throw or die. Oliver's spellbook is also in this room. And also, in regards to the princess or daughter of the merchant, she's very, very grateful to be rescued, but will snub any party member who approaches her romantically, as she is pledged to marry the prince. So that is essentially adventure number 3. And let's take a look at adventure number 4 here. The setup for adventure number 4 is there is a king, a different king than the prior adventure, and he is at war with a neighboring kingdom, which sort of was the setup of number 3. And your player characters are in service of this king, but you have been captured and now behind enemy lines. So the adventure starts with your player characters in jail with none of their equipment. Their equipment is hidden in a different room, and they are tasked to get their gear back or just escape in general. Now, if they do escape and head back to the king will outfit them with some regular gear so they clear out the outpost. So that is the setup for number 4. It doesn't really take a stretch of imagination to tie this adventure to the prior one, as you could use the same king. Also, if you want to tie it with the prior adventures with the merchant Caldwell, you could do so. Perhaps that the outposts and the cultists are upset that there is this group of adventurers that have been ruining plans for them, taking out their wizard, taking out a satellite outpost that they want to control. So maybe they kidnap them on purpose. So you could use that as a setup, and I would certainly recommend that you do so. So in the beginning, you are in jail, and yeah, your player characters will have no equipment on them. They are guarded by a simple gnoll, and he is not particularly bright. So any trick that they do, the DM is going to suggest that you allow them to get away with it. And in this adventure, I would probably rate it as the worst of the bunch. Probably the reason why mainly is it is very difficult if you just play it as it is written. You're going to have to give your player characters a lot of leniency, as there are wandering monsters here. As they are trying to escape, they might run into some troops, and there are a lot of troops here. I don't think if you play it strictly that they would survive, especially since they don't have their gear. And to get their gear, they have to get a key. And to get that key, they have to kill some troops. So it is a difficult setup. Before we get further into the adventure, let's take a look at the player map. And the outpost looks like this. So the player characters are in jail here. And where would their treasure be? Or where is the armory? Well, their armory is in room number 13. That is right over here. and this is where all the player characters' equipment are, but it is the armory. So there are going to be a lot of troops around this area, and yeah, there are a lot of guards. And how would the player characters know where to go? I guess you could have them kidnap a troop, and he could give some information away. Maybe there would be some signage, whatever you have to do to guide your player characters, and they will need a lot of guiding, as from my prior experiences, no one had fun playing this in a straightforward fashion. I'm not really going to describe most of these rooms, as they're either quarters and have troops, some are empty and have no troops. It's variations of the same thing. But this room here with the armory, the key to this area is held by level 2 fighters or higher. And you can see the list of troops here. A lot of them are veterans, but some are level 1 and some are level 2 and some are even higher. There is a commander here. This is room number 19. And so room number 19 is here. This is where the commander is. There is also some secret doors here. This leads to 42. So let's skip ahead here. Oh, by the way, there is a pantry here, and I believe there's also a kitchen. So those upset goblins from the prior adventure can be staffed and prior working in this area. So here is the commander. There's some people visiting, his wife and a visiting officer. If the alarm has been raised, the commander will be at the ready. He, of course, is going to have the best loot. You can see some of the rest of the map descriptions here of various quarters. Very boring, right? I don't like these type of missions where you have to clear out an area, just like the first one. It's relatively inane. Let's turn the page. And number 42 is, of course, going to be the treasury. So yes, there will be a massive amount of loot here, as well as a ring of fire resistance and a rod of cancellation. So I know I glossed over adventure number 4 very quickly, but that was basically it. Rooms with troops, rooms with no troops, and your player characters have to escape, get a key, get their gear, or simply escape. So that is adventure number 4, probably the worst of the bunch. So the next adventure, number 5, this is probably the most interesting one of them all. This is titled The Sanctuary of L1 the Ardent. So there is some background here. It's pretty involved. There is a religious sect called the Church of the Holy Sanctuary, and it's supposed to be quite popular. And they worship a being called the Namyats that appears to be a woman. And there is also a bell that's important to this church, where it is made of the pure platinum. And what is remarkable about this bell is it has no clapper, but it can still ring magically. And basically, this bell has been stolen, and they believe it is a disciple of this church. And of course, this disciple is Alwyn. So this happened some time ago, and it states in this adventure specifically, you're supposed to play Alwyn as a male or allude him to be a male, but actually this character is a female. And it becomes a little bit of a detail that you could exploit later. So your player characters have been hired by a king, not related to the other 2 prior kings, but you could tie it in to do so, or you could tie it into the rich merchant Caldwell. Either way, the local region has been under attack by a large monstrous force, and there is a fortress off to the countryside that seems to be the center of some great evil. And so you are tasked to go there, and of course, this will be the headquarters of Aldwin. And if you're trying to tie these adventures together, you can have this fortress and the army have a banner representing a goose or whatever animal or creature you want to pick from the original second adventure. So let's turn the page. And here is a map of the fortress. Room number 1 is over here. There's an entrance here. There's actually a secret door, but you want to have your player characters not find this one, as it is close and tied to the exit. So this is actually the escape route for Aldwin. Now, the maps are going to be described in a clockwise fashion, and in the center will be the main rooms. So let's start off with the entrance here. This entrance has a visible door. There is no guard here. The area looks relatively empty, but once they enter this area, they will hear a female voice. Who dares enter the shrine of Elwyn unbidden? Turn back now, for ahead lies certain death. The voice then breaks into a diabolical laughter. So she's a little bit mad, just like that prior magic user. And who knows, maybe they were lovers or something of that nature. So this is the voice of Elwyn. And yeah, this is what the author wants you to do, to not realize that she is actually the leader of this cult, and they want you to assume it's a male. I don't know if it's worth bothering to go through that whole subtext, as I don't have a problem the player characters knowing that the bad guy is a female to begin with. It just makes it a little bit straightforward. I don't know why that is involved. It's just strange, but if you know the reason why, let me know in the comments down below. In room 2, there is an altar where they can move it and find some loot underneath. There's another altar at number 3. And in between is a secret door. This is not readily available to find or suspect. This is actually supposed to be the exit, as over here, room 5, there is a trap door that will open up and that will be locked inside this mini dungeon. Now, the player characters will explore this area. You can see there's an X here because they will find a treasure map later that points to this area, and there is indeed treasure embedded in this wall. There is also a subsequent treasure map that will show this room here, room 9, with a treasure embedded on this portion of the wall. So let's flip the page. And in that mini little dungeon, that trap room itself, there's nothing in that room, but adjacent to it is an orc lair. So they have treasure in that lair, but also in that spot with the X, that's called the treasure of the troglodytes, there's a whole bunch of valuable loot. By the way, that trap is not triggered by pressure plate or anything like that. It states that Alwyn is watching them and triggers the trap manually. So if we go back to the map here, you can see it's in a spiral fashion, but she is in this hidden corridor. You can see here is a secret door. So she's actually in this hidden corridor that sort of wraps around this whole area. So she has little peepholes that she can view the player characters as they enter this fortress. So that's how she's able to handle everything manually, and you could even have her taunt the player characters through the walls, and I highly encourage you to do so, as it'll make it more silly and fun. So going on to the other rooms, there's some more altars. In room number 8 is a golem, and this golem doesn't do anything but attack you. I guess you could have it talk or ask a silly riddle or puzzle, but I'll leave that up to you. Room number 9 is a treasure map, and that was also embedded in the wall. There's a whole bunch of loot to be had there, some more altars and statues. Let's flip the page here. In room number 15, it's called a cell. So you see an area that looks empty, but once the player character enters here, there'll actually be a trap fall on top of them. And then they will see a panel open up with a keyhole and a key actually stuck in it. And Alwyn will taunt them, just turn the key and the freedom is yours. So maybe you could move it with a spell. Maybe you could change shape, go through the wall and get the key. But it is a little mini puzzle there. Room 16 has a black dragon. It's a young black dragon. It basically is very sleepy and chained to the wall. Your player characters right now can avoid the black dragon, but later on we'll probably have to fight this dragon, as Alwyn will try to make her escape with this black dragon, protecting her. So here, room 17 and 21 is the inner sanctuary. Most of this is just some descriptions of murals and things of that nature. However, one of them is going to be that bell that they have been tasked to find. Also, there's a lot of artwork in this area that shows Alwyn being like the glorified chosen disciple. And so basically it's a ego trip for her. The bell itself is on altar number 21. And once the player characters have investigated all the artwork and they notice the bell, Alwyn will cast a darkness spell. And during this time frame, some creatures will attack. There are 2 flying gargoyles and 2 shadows. Arwen, the Ardent, will fight herself once the player characters have defeated those creatures, and there will be light in the room. She will give a speech, you can read that, and she, of course, will have some magical equipment helping her out. And note that Arwen has superior strength, which gives her additional +1 to damage on any attack. Let's flip the page. And we're getting to the end of our adventure booklet. These are the list of spells that she has at the ready, including Cause Fear. Her strategy is to cast Blight before the party arrives, then cast Hold on a person followed by Curse. She will also free the Black Dragon from the chain if it's still alive. If the player characters take out the dragon, she will want to escape, and she's going to use that corridor that she hid in and taunted the player characters. And at the very end of it is the exit by the entrance. However, there is a cache of treasure, and this is Alwyn's personal loot. So she will fight to the death to protect this. On her body is a key that opens up that secret door. So yeah, don't have your player characters find that secret door and enter from this back way. Anyways, they get the key, they escape, and that is the completion of adventure number 5. So what do you think about this module, Castle, Caldwell, and Beyond? It has 5 short adventures, none of which I think are particularly great by themselves. You could tie it together and make it into a campaign, but even that campaign I don't think is one of the greatest ones. It does have some pretty cool artwork on the cover by Caldwell, but I think that's about it. As you can tell, it's not one of my favorite adventures, but regardless, I'm happy to present it to you. Not every TSR D&D product is the best, and yeah, I would put this in the lower tier. Well, hopefully you found this informative. As always, thanks for watching. Keep on adventuring out there.